Great. Hi all, welcome to Eetti's webinar on circular economy and human rights in the garment industry. I'm really happy to see so many of you here today. I'm Anniina Nurmi. I'm working as a sustainability manager at the Finnish NGO Eetti. And we have a really interesting 1.5 hour ahead of us. Before we go and deep dive into the topic, I want to say a few general instructions. As said before, the webinar is recorded, and for all the participants, excluding the panelists, I would kindly ask you to keep the mic and video off during the discussion. And at the end, there's time for questions. And then you can raise your hand and open your mic, or then feel free to write questions to the chat already during the webinar. And if you have any other questions or technical difficulties, you can write them to the chat. And already at this point, I want to introduce Emma Mikkilä, the Executive Director at Eetti.
Good morning, all.
So Emma will be in charge of the technical topics and the chat, so she will be answering the questions. But let's go into it. First, we have a teeny tiny poll for all the participants. And these questions have the possibility to have a little bit of an idea who we have here today. And Emma will share the questions. I would be really happy if you can answer. There are 3 questions, so if you just see one, please scroll down. And all of the questions are anonymous, so they are not singled out. But would be really nice to see who we have here today and what's your viewpoint on circular economy and human rights, as this is the main topic of today. Let's wait for just a few minutes or seconds to get all the answers. We can already see that there is a really nice variety of different kind of stakeholders present today. Let's see. Thank you for all the answers already. I think we are nearly we have had all of the answers. So now you can see also the results. So there's quite many companies or NGO representatives, some research institutions, many educational organizations, unions, and also not representing any organization. So I'm really happy to see so big of a variety. And most of you guys are promoting or working on circular economy already. And really nice to see that many of you are already incorporating also human rights into circular economy. Thank you for this. And then let's move forward. As you are working on circularity, you most definitely do know what circularity is all about, but a few emphasis on what we are talking about today, because many times the discussion evolves around circular economy being about recycling or making it possible through technical or technological innovations. And for sure, that's an important part of the equation. but more so the emphasis should be on making sure that the garment's life cycle is a long one, and that we change the whole system of fashion industry in a way that the new business models make it possible to work in a way that there is less production, less consumption, and more value in each garment. But the topic that we want to highlight today, that we do not have a circular economy ecosystem without people, without the workers. And there are many different kinds of jobs within the circular economy, as you know. We have, for example, like waste pickers, textile sorters, second-hand retailers, fiber producer, garment repairers, to name but a few. But all in all, we need people. And workers' rights are the core of it all. We need to respect the workers' rights when we design and formulate the new kind of circular ecosystems. And even though there are many benefits to a circular economy, it cannot be said that by definition or automatically circular economy would guarantee environmental sustainability or social justice. And there are already millions of people working within circular economy already now. And the unfortunate situation right now is that many of the same human rights violations are present in the circular economy right now that are present also in the linear model of the fashion industry. And also, if we are not thinking about the whole structures of the fashion industry, but also the circular economy, we do not change the fact that the benefits and the value are not distributed equally. So we have to focus on that as well. But this webinar is not about me showing slides, but to have a fruitful discussion. And next, I would like to introduce our panelists. We have first Irene Lanyero. She's working as a women and youth organizer at Uganda Textile, Garments, Leather and Allied Workers Union, and she has a strong expertise on workers' rights. And I have had the privilege to get to know Irene through Clean Clothes Campaign Network, which we are both of our organizations are part of. So I'm really happy to have Irene, you today here. And then we have Sirpa Pietikäinen. She's a Finnish member of the European Parliament, and she has over 15 years experience from EU and a lot more years and years from national politics. Sirpa will leave after 1 hour, but I'm really glad that you had the time to join us today. And third, we have Anniina Elomaa. She's the Chief Sustainability Officer at S Group, which is a Finnish network of companies in the retail and service sector working in a cooperative model. And to get an idea of the size and impact of S Group, their hypermarket chain Prisma has been the most popular place in Finland to buy clothes and footwear from for quite many years already. So thank you all for joining today, and I will stop the slides for now so we can dive into the conversation. I would like to start with Irene, because I think the circular economy that we have already in Uganda is a really good way for us to discuss about the current situation of worker rights in circular economy and what can we do to improve the situation. So Irene, could you share us a bit what kind of circular textile industry do you have in Uganda?
Thank you very much, Anniina, and a good morning to everyone. I hope I'm really audible enough. I may be saying good morning when it's an afternoon somewhere. So good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone who has joined the webinar today. In terms of the circular economy, an overview of the circular economy in Uganda is in terms of its size and also in terms of how formal or informal it operates. So in the size of Uganda, Uganda is ranked as the 5th second-hand importer in Africa. That was by 2023 alone. So the country imported about 80 million kilograms of used clothing. So it generated approximately $70 million in tax revenues from the imports of used clothing. And of course, the current formal textile industry cannot meet the local demand, and currently we have only 4 major industries that are running in the whole country, and they're supposed to meet the local demand and as well as the international demand. And the population stands at around 44 million Ugandans. So you'll imagine that the people who are employed under the circular economy are approximately 700,000 within the central market of St. Balikudembe, or Owino market, majorly known as that. That is alone within the central area within Kampala, but it's also distributed across the country, which could be having a much bigger potential of employing millions of people across the country. So the main distribution is always done within the central trading point, and it's later sent on to the other points across the country. People who are employed majorly within these central points work in informality. There is no formal ways of work, and then apparently it's almost 80 to 90,000 tons of used clothing are annually imported into the country to meet the local demand, and it also serves as a source of livelihoods for very many people living below the poverty line, and especially those who are unemployed and the ones who don't have a formal level of education. So I'll hand it back to you, Anniina. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. So it's the circular economy is a huge means of income to the people in the textile sector. So how big is the circular economy within the textile industry? So how big amount of the workers of the whole garment and textile industry work in the circular economy?
It's approximated to be 700,000 workers within the central market zone. But there are unclear statistics across the country because there are different kinds of markets from the different parts of the country. So the 700,000 is only limited within the central market point where the distribution and the major sorting and the buying and repurposing of the used clothing is done. So that's, yeah, for now.
Yeah. So like the majority of people within the garment and textile industry are working in circularity. Yeah. So you said that there is a lot of imports coming to Uganda, consisting of used textiles. Do you have an overview of where do the used clothes come from which continents or countries?
Yes, the used clothing come mainly from the continent of Asia, the US, and then prevalently some parts of Europe as well. So, and major countries within the different continents have been key at this. China, for instance, has been sending in clothing, India, Bangladesh, and then there are also some clothing that come in from the different European countries that could be aligned to the trading of secondhand clothing. And then the US is a major area that the used clothing come from.
Yeah, thank you. So Uganda is linked to many parts of the world in the whole lifespan of clothes. So the circular economy is mainly concerning like the used textiles. Could you tell like a concrete example of what kind of would be like a typical working day for a worker in the Ugandan circular textile industry?
A typical work day would depend on the kind of worker that is within the circular economy. Of course, there are various workers that we'll mention later on in the webinar. But then I'll take a small example of someone who owns a small shop or a street vendor, in that instance, who is a woman. They wake up as early as 4 a.m. to commute to the central market point, which is a window market. That is if they're living within the city center of Kampala. And at 4 a.m., of course, they will use a specific transport mode, which is a little bit dangerous as well in one or another. And they will face challenges along the way, but make it to the market. And when they make it to the market, they'll tend to be having certain modes of buying. There's a lot of fighting within the grading processes and the sorting process. When the wholesaler opens up the bales, very many vendors will be ready to buy from him. So they'll be fighting to pick up the best clothing. And in this instance, you'll find that maybe a dress can go for 5,000 because the earlier you are, the cheaper the clothing at that very moment, especially for the street vendors. So they'll pick clothing at 5,000 Uganda shillings, which is like €1.5. And then the grading is done by them. So they categorize the gradings in first and second class bales. So the first class bales are a little bit more expensive, which sometimes is selected and chosen by high-end boutiques that repurpose and retake it to the boutiques for resale at a much higher price. So the second class grading is of poor quality, which maybe like 60% of it also ends up in the landfills. But the wholesaler will pick the best that they can and then take it. Sometimes they do wash it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do steam the clothing to resell it and to repurpose it. Sometimes they don't. So in the end of the day, like at around 4 p.m., the vendor will take piles of clothing within the different corners of the streets to make sure that the clothing is sold out to other potential customers within the area. So you can clearly see that the person involved in this sale or the worker involved in this sale wakes up as early as 4 a.m., but then ends up also coming back home very late because when the markets close, it's probably like 9 p.m. in the night or 10. That's when they will also close to go back to their different destination points. And then the next day, the same process is revolving. Thanks.
Thank you. That really showcased like the type of work they do. So that was one example, but what other kinds of jobs are there in the secondhand trade or more broadly on the industry?
The other kinds of jobs are also majorly informal in nature. There's since we say there's precisely less or low education levels, so it's a composition of secondhand retailers, a composition of tailors who do repairs and reuse of some of the secondhand clothing within the market. And then we have traders or businessmen of all kinds. Lately, we have a renowned city traders association called Casita, who are very, very active in the process of the secondhand clothing. Then we have the different sorters, majorly women who keep sorting the best quality of brands and the best quality of clothing to take them to a much higher buying price. And then we have the waste pickers in the different companies. And then sometimes it's also individualized waste bin pickers who collect all kinds of textile waste and take them to the landfill. Then we have the street vendors, like I mentioned earlier on. There are very many people who are employed within the street vending processes because it's an open space, doesn't require any education levels. Then we have the transporters, of course, who do the transportation of the bales from one point to the other. We have the loaders who carry the huge bales on their backs. So all these kinds of jobs are within the circular economy in the country called Uganda.
Yes, and now as the title also of the webinar is human rights and circular economy, so the unfortunate situation is that the basic workers' rights or the human rights are not present at the moment for those workers. What would you say that are the most typical workers' rights violations that the circular workers encounter?
The main workers' rights violation, the major one to me, is the denial of the right to freedom of association and the right to join the trade union of choice. That's a major one. It cuts across, of course, within the circular and also the formal modes of work. And then lack of social protection is a big issue within this particular sector. The informal work approaches that we see on a daily basis, and then the hazardous working conditions or the unsafe working conditions. You really see that the loaders, for instance, are lifting very heavy loads of up to 50 kilograms of bales on their backs. And then the unsafe handling of waste by waste bin pickers, and then the poor housekeeping that we've seen in the different markets across the country. The poverty wages, yet working excess hours are very prevalent in in a circular economy. You'll find that a loader who carries almost 50 kilograms of bale is given on less than €1 for carrying per bale of 50 kilograms. So tailors repair for very low payments or very low repair costs. And then you'll find the gender issues that lead to vulnerability and then risk of job losses in case of fire ravages. And then the fire ravages, of course, also come as a result of the poor housekeeping within the different markets. Then very many people are in loan captivity, especially the women. They borrow loans to buy the secondhand clothing to keep repurposing and rebuilding on that. And then the harsh enforcement practices that we've seen cut across. There have been prevalent arrests of street vendors in most cases, which is very harsh. They are bundled up and dropped in jail without any cause or any clear charges. So that's the typical situation, labor situation within the circular economy that the workers are encountering currently.
Thank you for sharing. Before we open up the floor to discussion from others as well, I want to tap into the used textiles ban, because that's for sure a topic that has been also covered by, for example, in the media here in Finland as well. So I'm sure that many might have the question that, okay, how are we talking about the used textiles industry at the same time as we assumingly do have the ban of imported used textiles in Uganda. So could you, Irene, tell that what's the situation right now, and regarding the ban, and what does it mean for workers in working with used textiles?
The situation right now with the ban, of course, the ban is being moved to be effective, but of course there are very many challenges that are surrounding the ban that is stopping the ban from being effective. One of the significant ones is there was a major strike by the traders on the ban effect. But if the ban goes into place, then that will mean that there will be a sudden loss of employment, livelihoods, and meaning of life for many, many workers, and who a majority are women, young people, unemployed and uneducated. And then secondly, of course, not on the worker side, but on the government side, there's always been a discussion that there will be loss of revenue to the government and a heavy burden of overproduction to meet the local and the international market demands that are in place. So it's a ban that is in progress. Several attempts by the president have been on. He always goes on TV and he says, "Oh, we are effecting the ban today," but then the implementation process is also a big major challenge that is being faced within the country, because based on the lack of transparency, issues of losing out on the employment, it's making it a much more debatable issue than we thought that it would be effective. So the ban is a yes and yet a no as well. The implementation is really a struggle in process, I would say.
Thank you, and that's really interesting, because for sure maybe many do think that it would be a good thing to ban the textiles, used textiles coming to Uganda, but as you have now showcased that there are so many people depending on the income from secondhand. So we need to also think of ways how we can, in that sense as well, to rethink the way the whole life cycle of a garment is designed, and how we can incorporate this kind of valuable work that, for example, the people in Uganda are already doing. Then I would like to ask Anniina Elomaa from S Group that how well is S Group at the moment aware of the end of life of those garments that S Group has produced, and where do they end up, and how much and are you aware of the consequences for workers in Global South?
Well, if you think about then the system in Finland, that how it works when you think about then the textiles that are used, that what happens to them. Of course, we as a retailer, we offer then the possibility for the people to have them recycled in the recycling points. After that, then it's in a way out of our hands, in that sense that if you think about then the traceability, that do we trace them where they go? The answer is directly no. We don't know where they end up. Of course, we have these kind of, let's say, requirements in the agreements with our partners, either they are producers or if we are then talking about then other partners like who are taking care of the things from the recycling points. But there is no traceability or any tagging in the clothes that where are they going. So it is then clear answer is no, we don't know where they end up. We can of course have then the understanding that what are then the challenges, and I think that what Irene was describing, I would say that it is in a way known that there are challenges in this sector. But I would also say that we have the same challenges when you think about then the production of the textiles or the clothes. So I think that in general, what I and how I see it is that in the linear system, we have the same challenges as we have in the circular system. So definitely we should consider the human rights issues in both of the sectors, either or, and in the production and the end of life part of the value chain as well. And this is very much a question of tracing the things when you think. So when you know where they end up, then you have the possibility then to do and take the actions. But how to do that in a way that we would know and we would be able to trace piece by piece is of course a heavy duty. When you think about then the production of the textiles, it is a bit easier, and we have been working with that area for many years, and especially in our own private label products. So that is definitely easier, and we know the production facilities, and we are able to audit and trace them. But I would also say that one of the challenges at the moment in the circular economy and in textiles is definitely when it comes to the human rights is the informal sector and what is happening there as well. So I think that what Irene was describing is definitely a topic that needs to be discussed and considered that what can be done, and that requires activities from every single party along the value chain. Nobody can do it alone.
Thank you, Nina. Could you describe some of the actions that you are already like implementing or thinking of regarding exactly the informal sector and the difficulties that they are regarding human rights?
I would say that that requires, for example, that how do we then promote the due diligence process within the company, covering then all these different areas, and that requires also the due diligence actions from the parties along the value chain. If you think that S Group as the retailer who is selling the clothes and then selling them to the customers who are then kind of after using it then recycling it, there is of course a huge challenge related to that what kind of actions we as an S Group can do, what we can expect from our partners. The kind of the value chain isn't that easy when you are actually directly then, if you compare it to the production side, because then you are working directly with the factories where you are buying the clothes, and that's a different story where you have that. So it requires kind of the due diligence process and the due diligence regulation to be in place so that everybody can do that and everybody can have then the possibility or the requirement to act accordingly. It's not a one single party who can do it. We can do our part, but we need the others to do their part as well. And of course, it's not kind of, I'm not saying that we are not responsible on the topics. Yes, we are, but it's not a thing that that we as a retailer can solve ourselves. But that's definitely an issue. And one thing I also, what Irene was saying about the rights and the workers' rights, for example, it's really important that the workers, they understand their rights. and they know what they are, so that they are also able to tell about the challenges. They are also able to bring them up. They are also able to tell that things are not okay. So you have to first understand. So I think that there is also still a lot to be done in that sense as well.
Yes, thank you. And for sure, like the unions, where Irene is doing the actual work on also sharing this knowledge is super important part of the equation. And regarding the fact that there are many similarities, but differences when it comes to the different parts of the value chain. Like you said, that the companies have been more so focusing on the production part, and for sure that's a super important part, in a sense that also, of course, this webinar could have been solely focusing on of course the production part and the just transition when it comes to also in the circular economy of the production part, and these are all for sure linked together, as now we have the example from the end of life part, but many of the same issues, as you said, are part in all of the steps of the production or the value chain or the whole life cycle. And I think the things that Irene shared, I think very valuable, in a sense that we get the idea of the situation from the end of life as well. But Nina, you mentioned due diligence and legislation, and that's a super important part of topics that can improve the situation that we are currently in. And as there is quite a few up and coming EU legislations that are connected to today's topic, well, directly or indirectly. So then I would like to give the floor to Sirpa Pietikäinen, member of the parliament. So Sirpa, what do you think? How will the agreed or planned EU legislation improve the conditions of work in circular economy in Global South? Okay, now we have the example from Uganda, but more broadly on the value chain in Global South.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate the fact that you took the circular economy, that is another part of the life cycle of the product, up, because actually what we should be doing is to tweak our regulatory framework so that it has the both ends in due diligence, the production and then the afterlife of the products, because in the circular economy, of course, that is the another part of it. And as a part of the due diligence regulation, it was a big fight to have it at all in place, and now it's sort of a concerns about the climate and the origin side, to have the planetary boundaries. So you would need to look the other environmental factors also, the resource efficiency, the longevity, the biodiversity, the chemicalization, water consumption, and all that. And then, of course, the social inclusion, that is the ESG. And that's why I like that it should be always the ESG, because it is the impact on the human beings. And then the governance, and that means how the government, the company is implementing factually of course, good governance in taxation, in treatment of the workers, but also this due diligence process at itself. And as Nina mentioned, it should be compulsory to everybody, because then you wouldn't have the laggards or free riders. You would have fairer, more level playing field. And plus, what I have heard from quite a number of companies, that it might be, even as big company as S Group, difficult to go and ask all that information all around the world, because it's only one company in a relatively small country from EU telling now you would need to change your auditing system and everything. But if you go there and say, look, in the EU we have the regulation, we need to know that you respect ILO principle, that the workers are, their human rights are respected, their rights to organize themselves, proper working times, proper salary, healthcare, and so forth. It would be totally different thing. The problem itself is, of course, as mentioned already, is it this or that end? It is always in poorer countries. It is the less fortunate people working that are deprived in industries, in case you do not have a proper regulation. And then it is, how do you create the local auditing systems? And this is something that is a bit of the hard cake. It is for the companies themselves, but it is also for the EU and regulations, because we do not have direct forcing mechanisms, let's say on Uganda, and we shouldn't as a EU to say how you administrative your laws. So the only way to do that is to have it in EU legislation, and then the companies forcing it in their value chain, and then the companies having auditing systems that are based in EU, so that they are under the EU regulation. And these auditing systems can use NGOs, they can use trade unions, they can make this kind of on-place visits and so on, and that should be part of it. So we actually know quite a lot what to do and how to do. And then I don't know if we have time to talk about the omnibus, but all in this to give the information for consumer, for investor to think, or the lender as a bank to know that, okay, these companies are trying their best. No one is perfect. I'm not perfect as a human being, but what really means is that, is there a real genuine effort to make things right? And now if you do not have harmonized reporting, the S Group can do as beautiful reports of its activities as it can, but if it lacks comparability on the systems and frameworks, the K Group, the Lidl, or whatever Carrefour does, for consumer, it's difficult to know, is there really a difference? And how to compare. And that's why this omnibus, the company reporting, is so essential. And that was in its first initial baby steps, what to report and how to report, as I referred to due diligence, what should be there in place. So I'm really saddened by the fact that now we are stripping off the omnibus, and we heard the Merz and Macron as their political deal to say that we should scrap the whole due diligence. And I'm very happy that many companies have been very active and vocal about this, but still I would encourage and urge the companies to do that, because as stupid it might sound, the only thing what we can do is to make a lot of noise. And instead of having one letter signed by 150 companies, there should be 150 emails from different companies telling what the F are you doing? This is bad for our business, because this is what the other side is doing. And that's why you see the proper companies doing their very nice and polite work here. And then there's this part of the companies that actually is not that big amount, but the volume is huge. When they send emails, they meet the MEPs, the group leaders, and they say Europe is destroyed and our economy is destroyed because of this overburden of regulation and so forth. And so it's a bit of the urban legend that it is non-administrable sort of a chaos without any good and any purpose.
Thank you, Sirpa, and thanks for highlighting the importance of companies to push for well, all in all, for better regulation and a more ambitious regulation, but especially regarding the omnibus. As you mentioned, and also Nina mentioned about the importance of the corporate sustainability due diligence, and even though there are many, as said, like up and coming regulations, there might be still shift, as we are currently seeing that we won't have those regulations implemented if we don't fight back and if we don't make noise. And that was a super important request for all of you guys today here, whether you are a representative of a company or other stakeholder group, to make noise. Nina, are you making noise? That's a comment.
Yes, we have been trying to make noise about that, but I also wanted to maybe to comment what Sirpa was saying, because I think there is an important factor that we should understand that what can happen if the due diligence doesn't cover all companies in a way. Let's take this example of now the textile and the circularity, that if we as the producer are producing it, we are selling it, and then the consumer is giving it back to the collection point. And we could have, if then the companies who are taking care of the textile after that are not under the due diligence, what can S Group do? Question to all of you. What can we do? We can just require. But if they are not kind of covered by the legislation, they can be the free rider. And what is then the bad thing is that they are not potentially working for the human rights. And that's why it is so important that it is covering as large amount of companies as possible. Because when we are trying then to change the system, we need to take all in, because what we can do is just to push and to ask. And of course, we might have power in Finland, but if you think globally, then we don't have the power. And that's why I see that it's extremely important to include all sectors, as big amount of companies as possible. And then we need to understand that the due diligence can be different to the smaller ones. Let's act according what they can do, so the burden can be lower for them than it is to the big companies. And this is what the UNGP says, in my view, and in the way that I have read them. So I think that we should definitely keep the noise, like Sirpa said, and try to push it, because otherwise the change is not coming in. And then we are discussing the same topics after a few years again and again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is exactly so. Irene, what are your thoughts regarding, well, can be regarding the Corporate Social Due Diligence Directive or legislation all in all? Or like comments to Sirpa's and Nina's comments?
Okay, I really want to say we keep up the noise, like Nina says, and the noise should cut across from all stakeholders or all partners who are involved within the supply chain. I wanted to comment mainly on the due diligence laws. The due diligence laws, when you see them, they're really, really something that would change the circular economy and, of course, change the informality to formality if properly pushed and utilized by the different African governments. But it's just sometimes that it's unfortunate that the best laws that always come in most cases fail to be implemented within the spheres of the African context. That is purely because of the inconsistency, the intransparency that is happening, and especially on issues of corruption. We see a lot of corruption, like Nina said earlier on, that the traceability of some of this used clothing is questionable. You don't know where the clothing end up. It's properly packaged, it's properly sorted, probably in Europe. But then the low grading of the clothing will find its way out within the different entry ports in Africa in one or another. And at the end of it all, they find their end life in the landfills. So the effect of due diligence laws has to be really aligned with the trade and investment protocols, the different trade and investment protocols within the African sphere. Like recently, there's a huge discussion around the African Free Continental Trade Agreement that is opening up the space and spheres of discussion alongside issues of trade and investment. But you will not find EU due diligence laws being integrated in such trade and investment laws, which are very important economic background in that instance for the continent. So the issue of transparency remains a challenge since it's majorly broken in most cases by the corruption practices that are ongoing. And then also in integrating some of these circular economy practices that are ongoing or are coming up. In most cases, you'll find, I'll give a case of Uganda, in most cases, you'll find that such huge changes or dynamics or discussions, in most cases, workers are left out of the table, which makes it more questionable, because if one stakeholder is left out, then what could be the impact or the cause of some of the discussions that will be aligned towards climate and environmental issues. And the last that I want to mention is it's that I've already mentioned it as well. It's that a majority, there's a lot of free riders in the process who go unchecked. In that instance, I would say that the audit of the production facilities needs to be put up and needs to be looked into keenly with a lot of transparency, regulations that could be aligned to it. And also there should be an insisting from the EU due diligence law. I know it's there, but then there should be some sort of insisting that the workers take part in the audit processes at the production facilities, because we've seen instances of facilities getting checked, and then they just tick in the box that they have all the labor rights practices okay. And then in one end or another, you find that they are producing or selling to the European market and accessing the market, and yet way back here still violating labor practices or laws, and the major one being not even recognizing the freedom of association and the right to collective bargaining. So the responsibility needs to be collective and it needs to be enforced wholesomely. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. We are almost done with the first hour, so I would like to hear from Sirpa your comments regarding this, and also I would like to hear from you that what do you think? What could you do in your work to take the workers to the forefront and include the workers in the decision making? What kind of concrete actions could you do?
Well, what I'm doing, and I should be doing even more, and what we as a politician could do, is, of course, to have this kind of a contacts. I haven't had so many contacts on the circular economy side, so I'm happy to establish a contact, Irene, with you and some others through Eetti and S Group or whatever other links. I have quite extensive sort of a networking on the production side in Pakistan, Afghanistan, in various places, and they are pretty horrific stories, as we know what can happen in worst of the cases in Asia, in Africa, and especially in India, Pakistan, Afghanistan region. Well, anyway, and one for the companies to check, by the way, Nina, is the fact that, for example, in Pakistan, the law is implemented and the companies are implementing the right for association. So tick the boxes, right? But what happens when you hear the workers is that if you do that, then suddenly you find yourself sooner or later out of the work. So yes, you have a right, and you have a right for example, lunch breaks. But in fact, if you do, you are given the worst part of the work and harder work and extra hours. And if you don't do them, then you are kicked out. So they are very superficial rights, and I didn't know how companies really can sort of check those, because if you go to the company, actually on their statements and on their procedures, everything is okay, but nothing is okay then on the floor level or the working safety or other safeties. But then if you complain by having accidents, you are kicked out. If you complain in dormitories about sexual harassment, you are kicked out. And in company regulation and rule book, it's strictly forbidden to have any type of the sexual harassment. And then it is quite often mail cards during the nights or whatever, and quite a number of women sleeping in the dormitories. So it's not unknown that things happen against people's will. And then that goes what Irene said. I didn't know how to organize that the workers should be heard, because what they told that some companies are trying to do it. But then you pick up those workers that are very obedient and get better paid, and who say to hearing, oh yeah, everything is fine, and look on the paper, we have all the rights and no problems. And those ones who really could tell are sort of set aside. So this is something we would need to think with the trade unions and others, how really to get the and how to use the NGOs to really fact find the real situation. So that is one thing what we can do, and it needs this kind of establishment of tight contacts. And what I was thinking, this is a bit of the wild thing, is that how could we create a effective trademark, fair trade textiles that would cover everything, and that would have a better status in the company reporting. But that needs a bit of the upgrading in the system. And knowing my background here, it's not that I would be criticizing, but giving the resources, then this kind of a semi-official status, like we have in some other labels, so that you could create sort of a systemized semi-official system how to find this kind of a tacit information, especially in human rights, because you can't measure it like emissions or something like that. So this is one thing that, and then I hope, and I don't know what the companies could do, but it's very uphill battle, but we could use part of our development aid in supporting trade unions and NGOs on the site on third countries to build up the civil society, to build up the awareness, to build up the support. And they would need some sort of an unemployment fund or whatever that is, because if you don't, as we know, if you don't have anything and you are kicked out of the work, it is such a high risk that you just don't do it. You don't disclose the information. You do not start rebelling in the workplace because you can't afford it. And how do we support then these people who have opened their mouths? Sort of a, in quotes, whistleblower support system or something like that. Well, happy to hear your comments about this, but this is something that I now was thinking when hearing you and thinking the other end. And then, of course, the reporting is that should be on both direction, on the upstream and downstream, compulsory to all companies.
Thank you, Sirpa. Valuable thoughts, and I think we will continue the discussion exactly on those topics. But at the moment, now I can say a huge thank you, Sirpa, for joining, and we will definitely continue the discussions, and we'll be happy to work as a contact for members from the workers representatives as well. But thank you, Sirpa, and we will continue now the discussion.
Thank you, and hopeful future for all of you and all of us.
Thank you. That is needed. Thank you. I had many different kind of thoughts regarding Sirpa's comments, but first I would like to ask Irene, what are your thoughts regarding Sirpa's ideas of how to include workers?
Yeah, very, very important ideas, of course. Extensive networking on the production side is really, really important to connect the supply chain dots. Of course, when you look at the freedom of association, is just always like a tick in the box. There are very many labor rights violations that are ongoing that go unchecked, and unclear production practices that also affect the environment in that instance. So establishing contact focal points with trade unions is very, very important in that instance. And of course, with CSOs that are also working or dealing with workers, and then upgrading the system according to the EU due diligence laws would be important in that instance. Because if I look at a situation, a case in point, where rights of workers are being violated and issues of freedom of associations are being sidelined in that matter, in a big country like Uganda, for instance, which has ratified very many ILO conventions, including the one of the right to freedom of association and collective bargaining being one of them. You'll find that in most cases, the employers have a very huge upper hand towards different practices. They're able to dodge the auditing practices. They find a way of putting out pseudo unions in some of these facilities. And also, if we do the thorough auditing as a union, you'll find that the payment, the payroll, there are always two different kinds of payrolls. In case the EU asks for compliance or anything, they'll issue out the second payroll and leave out the really meager or poverty wage payrolls within the factory setting. So all those situations have to be checked. and they really need to be put into practice. I would give an example recently, and this has been published on the industrial website. You can find it there as well. The union petitioned the Ugandan parliament over labor rights violation of one major big production facility that supplies the EU, that also sells out to the different continents, including AGOA, of which it was banned after finding out some of the issues of labor rights violations in this particular facility. So the union petitioned them, but they still had the guts to take the union to the Supreme Court over human rights and labor rights issues. So that is something that really needs to be checked. This is a facility that is ticked in the box to be having best labor practices, having the best production modes within the country. And apparently, when we petitioned the parliament, we also had to lodge a complaint in the industrial court of Uganda regarding the same labor rights violations. But they are threatening a factory closure because they've made a lot of profits from Uganda. So they're threatening a factory closure, that they will move to the next East African country, which is, in that instance, it's Kenya. They'll move to the next East African country. And then they went ahead, of course, to put up a situation that the union practices that are ongoing right now, we are trying to jeopardize the GDP of the economy based on that kind of lie. So some of these facilities, you question yourself, how do they end up selling to the production to the buyer countries, or without having to be checked on, especially labor standards or workers' rights violations that are ongoing within their spaces. So they need to check the enforceability and accountability coming from some of these factories that are in place. And that can only be done with having stronger unions. Of course, by having stronger unions, there should be some sort of collaborations between unions in the global south and unions in the global north, and especially to do with issues of research. If there was some sort of research to background check on how some of these operations are being done alongside human rights issues, and supporting trade unions also to build up capacities alongside the circular economy is very, very important, and it will be a remedy forward for all the workers in the different production lines in the supply chain.
Thank you, Irene. Especially the fact that there should be remedy is a really important topic that cannot be left without. Now, soon it would be time for a few questions from the audience. So you can already write into the chat or already raise your hand. While we are waiting for them, I would ask Nina a bit of the same question that I had for Sirpa, that what could you do, practical steps that would take the workers to the forefront and include the workers in the decision making?
First of all, I have to say that what Sirpa was saying about the kind of, and also what Irene was mentioning about the audits and the tick in the box challenge, I think that the companies recognize this, and I think there is also maybe not so well known fact that companies are already getting this information via, for example, this whistleblowing or Speak for Change systems, and that is, I think, is extremely important that I think that companies recognize that the auditing and the auditing results is not the whole truth. And it is difficult to get that information from the workers, and they are, as we call it, they are coached sometimes to answer right to the question. And then you can, and there are talented people who are doing these discussions, and they can see that. And I think there is also the possibility for the collaboration to have these kind of discussions together with the workers to understand and get that kind of let's say the real truth out. Because then when you have that, then you have the possibility also to take the actions. And what I see important is also that we as companies, we should definitely collaborate in the way that we share the information. We are able to do that. There is an efficient way of doing that. Because I have also received feedback from the different countries and from the different factories that it's really important, and we are not against what you are doing. But there are so many companies who are coming in, and then there is a second one coming in and a third one coming in, and they're asking the same questions and they want to do the same things. So one of the things what we could definitely do is the collaboration, and this could include also the trade unions. So how do the companies collaborate with these difficult situations? For example, if we are either related to the production or to the circularity, that when we are operating in certain areas and certain countries, that there are different companies who can collaborate. So this collaboration platforms is something that I would definitely promote, and have then the different actors also there. Sirpa was mentioning Pakistan, but I would also bring then Bangladesh to the table and say that, for example, the Accord International has been a good solution in that sense, that it has opened up also the situations. It's not only about the things that Accord International is responsible, but there is also other complaints that we come aware of via Accord. And I think that this type of systems should be definitely also promoted in the future. And what companies, or based on my experience, I think that the important part is also that when you collaborate for quite a long time with certain parties and certain, let's say, factories or partners in the global south, then you can really make the change. So kind of not switching the supplier all the time or your partner all the time helps, because when you can see that when you have had this long-term collaboration, then you start getting into the real topics, and then you can make the development steps. So I think that's also one thing what companies can consider to really create long-term relationships, and I think that's important. Of course, there are the business factors related to this, but to have that kind of possibility and thinking that maybe it's good to have these kind of long-term relationships. It helps. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Nina. Now we would have time for a question from the audience. Would somebody like to ask? If not, we can start with Emma.
Hi, and thank you for a very fruitful discussion. I was thinking that, we have this serious problem in the industry, in the value chain, that the volumes in the textile industry are way too high, and it looks like small changes won't solve the problem. I was thinking about S Group, and I would like to ask from Nina, when it comes to S Group's private labels in clothing and textile sector, do you have any future goals to reduce the production levels? And if so, how could you achieve this?
Well, we don't have exact goals that we would reduce, like the sales or the production of the clothes as such, but we have started a very difficult discussion about the overconsumption in textiles, but in general also that what we should consider is that what kind of these new let's say models and business models should be, but we haven't set any goals at the moment yet. And I think that this comes again to the question that how should we then let's say, nudge or teach the consumers that what are then the possibilities within the circularity. We have asked that from our customers, that how do they feel about for example, the reused clothes, because we are seen as the seller of the new clothes. And this has been interesting because people don't see us as a kind of a seller of reused. And that is a little bit like digging and asking the question again and again. Then they start thinking, why not? And I think this is also the kind of the approach that we need to have, that we start kind of the discussion and bring these kind of and test how the consumer, how can we nudge the consumers to change their behavior. But we haven't yet any kind of target that we would lower the production volumes, but definitely overconsumption, a discussion point, that what should we do that. And we can see that the consumer behavior is also changing. And we are now having this collaboration also with the EMU to sell the used clothes and recycled clothes in the so-called department stores.
Thank you, Nina. Would you say, like you said, that you don't have any goals to reduce, but would that be something that could be in the future that you would have specific goals to reduce production?
I think that one thing is that what we should do definitely is to have a goal to have this kind of recycled and reused and different type of services, for example, that what kind of what does it mean? And I think this is something where we should have goal, because I think it naturally comes then that the production of the clothes will decrease. What we have also tried to do is that when you have in the fashion, we have these different type of seasons, that we have certain basic let's say clothes and items that don't change, you would say, almost at all, which means then of course that they are the ones that stay there always. And I think that's something that we have paid attention to, and that is also important. I think that then also the different type of services related to circularity, we have tried them in certain regional co-ops. There are these services provided. And I think that that's something that we are definitely trying in the future as well. So try to kind of nudge towards that you can do the repair for the clothes and you can have it as a service and things like that. So definitely the areas of reused and then kind of these services that are included and increase them.
Thank you, Nina. Emma, did you have one? We would have one time for one question. So did you have one for Irene?
Actually, there is some discussion in the chat, and Anna was asking about what kind of initiatives do you see either in maybe that means in Uganda, Finland, or globally to make the garment industry more circular. And Nina actually was discussing this just in her comments. But I was thinking maybe Irene would have some ideas about how to make the industry more circular, meaning utilize used clothes better and producing clothes from recycled materials, for example. And how do you see human rights in these initiatives?
Thank you for the question. First of all, currently the government is having an initiative that they are putting across of upskilling workers within the textile garment industries. And that is utilizing the used clothing to repurpose it and to remodel it as a way out of reducing the excess that goes to the landfills. So there's a project that is being supported by the UK and the EU on this. So the circular economy workers are the ones who are being targeted, especially the young tailors who sit within the markets and others. They will be trained in this particular facility, and then at the end of it, find a mode of recycling the excess used clothing that find their way into the landfill. In terms of making sanitary pads, I don't know how ecologically friendly that as well will be anyway, based on the chemicals that come with this clothing and other processed clothing. We've also seen an adaptation by the fashion industry lately that they recycle some of these clothing, like the denim jeans, the excess jeans that are being dropped away. Some of the designers have found it a point of changing the fashion and creating a better taste out of the second-hand clothing that will be finding their way into the landfills. And of course, the issue of human rights in this instance is very, very important. We'll find a situation where this particular economy works in an informal mode and there's no representation of informal sector. I'm very happy to hear that the ILC, the International Labour Congress, recently was discussing on issues of informalized work. And probably, most likely, maybe there will be a convention that will be adopted at the end of the day to integrate the informal sector workers into formalized mode and labor working conditions. And the best part would be if the unions would also integrate this into their systems by recruiting and organizing these workers within the informalized mode of work to improve on their labor and human rights conditions within the circular economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Really valuable discussions, and there would be a lot more to discuss about, but now we are moving to the last minutes of today's webinar. So I still would like to say just a few words regarding our new guide on circular economy and human rights. Many of the same topics that we have covered today are also included in the guide, and it's meant to be like a really practical guide, especially for fashion companies, how to incorporate human rights into circular economy. It's available in Finnish and English at our website, so I would be really happy if you want to look more into it. And even though it's directed especially for companies, the content is relevant for sure to other stakeholders as well. Now I won't go into more into the examples because I wanted to have more time to the great discussion. But a few highlights from the guidebook, including workers that has been discussed today. The importance of supporting freedom of association, a really important topic. And producing less. And accelerating regulation. So do everybody have a contact with local MEPs to support the Corporate Due Diligence Directive. And as you can now see here, that the collaboration between different stakeholders outside the bubble is super important to be able to have this kind of big structural changes. But now, lastly, I would ask Emma to start a second poll for all of you participants. There are just 2 questions, so it's a short one. I would like to hear if you got any new insights or learned anything new on this topic, and then would be great to hear what are your thoughts that would these topics, especially like making sure that human rights are considered in circular economy activities, would this be something that you would plan to focus more on in the future? Let's wait for just a minute to have this. And I can see that many of you guys have learned new. Let's wait for just a couple of seconds. And we will just have the closing words. Great. So great to hear that you have learned new and you are looking forward to focusing more on human rights and circular economy. I'm really happy for this. And at this point, I want to have a big thank you for all the participants, but especially our panelists, Irene Lanyero, Anniina, Elomaa, and Sirpa Pietikäinen. Thank you for so much for the discussions, and we will definitely continue the discussions also in the future, and I will be happy to also continue these discussions with for all of you participants and the panelists as well. And last but not least, we are in the process of making a living wage campaign next fall. So all of you Finnish participants, check our website, and if you have the possibility to support our crowdfunding campaign, we would really appreciate it. But now, have a nice day, and let's continue the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Anniina.